Hello, Jamie.
Hello, Daron. Great to be back with you again.
Great to see you. And here we are, probably in maybe the most strategic site in the entire state of Israel, wouldn't you say?
Wow, look at this. Welcome to Mount of Olives.
Exactly. Welcome to all of our viewers all over the world. I'm Daron Spillman. This is Jamie Elgrod. And over the next few minutes, we're going to show you something incredible that flips over the way people think in many ways. Now, we want you to know you're looking at the Temple Mount, one of the largest structures in the world that my dear friend Jamie, the time traveler, is going to tell us about. And just to the south of it, today when you look beyond the Temple Mount, you see Jerusalem, but actual Jerusalem is none other than
City of David,
City
biblical
of David.
Jerusalem.
And where is that, Jamie?
Right under the southern wall of Temple Mount. Biblical Jerusalem actually began from that 15-acre hill and stretched up north to Mount Moriah and later on west, as we can see today, remnants of that ancient city.
Amazing. I want to ask you a question, Jamie. The old city of today, is that the old city from the time of King David?
Well, it's an old city. It's not an ancient city.
Okay.
So we have to define, we have a few Jerusalems. We have biblical Jerusalem, known as the City of David. We have the old city of Jerusalem. If you look towards the houses, right in the center of the old city, we can see right behind us, you can see all those tiny little domes. Once you start seeing the cranes and the red roof tiles behind, that's when you know you're in the modern city. So, ancient city, old city, and modern city, as we know it today, modern Jerusalem.
Now, Jamie, let me ask you a question. When I look out at this view, I see the Muslim quarter, the Christian quarter, the Armenian quarter, and the Jewish quarter. What did King David see when he looked out from this area?
Exactly the same, but nothing, meaning the same landscape, same topography, but no houses whatsoever. King David sees the City of David, that 15-acre hill we're speaking of. Later, after his death, his son Solomon will be the first one to expand the city up north and build the first temple on the mountain right behind us. Today, a Muslim shrine, but that Muslim shrine is actually built above the exact location of the first temple built by King Solomon 3,000 years ago, destroyed 400 years later, and the second temple that was built right in the same location and destroyed by the Romans 2,000 years ago.
So you're telling me that the Dome of the Rock is sitting on a platform that was built by King Herod to house the temple, and now if we go beneath that, it's a second temple Jewish site?
No doubt about that. The platform that we can see right behind us, the eastern wall of Temple Mount, is one out of 4 retaining walls built by King Herod when he dresses on Mount Moriah, this huge platform. And when we examine closely the foundations of all the 4 walls surrounding Temple Mount, they do date back archaeologically 2,000 years ago.
First of all, let me ask you a question. This thing looks humongous. I mean, I'm looking at these walls. It's been around for 2,000 years. What are we talking?
This is the largest project ever built in the East. No doubt about that.
In the East?
Yes, sir. No doubt about that.
What are we talking, Jamie?
With the size? Well, it's roughly 12 football fields.
12 NFL.
No, real football.
American.
No, sir, you got it wrong. We're talking about 12 real soccer
fields.
No, you're right.
Soccer
it's NFL.
fields. You know, we've got Brits and Americans over here. We don't want them to start, going at it each other.
It's still soccer. English soccer is real football.
Okay.
But I'll let you go.
I'll give you that, but this is definitely 12 NFL
12
fields?
NFL fields, yes, sir.
Wow, that
Huge.
is absolutely mammoth.
And we know it's Herodian. We definitely know that the foundations building Temple Mount are 2,000 years old.
So we have a structure that's 2,000 years old, but as we know, many of our viewers, and I've often gotten letters, people will say to me in emails, how do you know there's actually anything original from there if the Muslims don't let you dig?
Well, that's easy. When you walk around Temple Mount, you can actually identify the way of quarrying out the stones you can see on the Temple Mount, meaning the understones you can see right over here have this framework that is typical to 2,000 years ago, called Herodian style quarrying. And when we check the mortar within the stones, organic material is found in between. Carbon dating that material dates back 2,000 years ago. And Daron, unfortunately, a sad or an unfortunate event took place over here in the year 2000. Would you like to share a few words about that?
I remember the day that we were notified that there had been an undercover archaeological destruction of massive scale that took place here on the Temple Mount. The Waqf, the Muslim authority responsible for the Temple Mount, dug, without permission of course, and emptied 15,000 tons of archaeological earth from the Temple Mount in order to build another mosque, one that seats 5,000 people, and they literally dumped it in the valley. And you, Jamie, if I'm not mistaken, you've actually sifted through that.
I have.
What did we find in that stuff?
So there's the sifting project on the slopes of Mount of Olives right behind me. Every day, volunteers who sift and dig over there find ancient seals carved in ancient Hebrew, coins in ancient Hebrew, arrowheads, soil that with burned vessels that do date back thousands of years ago to the destruction. It's incredible.
So the irony is that out of this destruction carried out by the Islamic Waqf, it actually gave us the first and only opportunity to study what's beneath the Temple Mount. And if I understand, 50% of it, or a humongous percent of it, goes back to Temple times.
Indeed, Aaron. Up until that moment, and up until today, no authority was allowed to go up Temple Mount or within and dig or excavate and see what was under the structure. That unfortunate incident was the opportunity that we had to discover what we have underneath Temple Mount.
Unbelievable. Now, Jamie, I'm sitting here with you. It's a beautiful day, and we're heading into Jerusalem Day, which is the day of the liberation of Jerusalem, celebrated all throughout all of Israel. I see people here. I can see Muslims and Christians and Jews walking in the street, and everybody's safe here. Take us back in time, because I think we take this for granted. What was it like before Jerusalem Day? Were Jews and Christians allowed here? And what is it like? What changed? What happened?
This whole area was a war zone. Remember, between 1948 and 1967, for 19 years, Jerusalem was partitioned. 1967, things changed.
1948, Jordan blasts through this area, shelling the old city, and they conquer and illegally occupy this entire area. Now, I know that they made a deal with Israel, saying that Israel would have access to the Western Wall, but did they ever honor that deal?
Never honored that deal. A day after that, finished.
It was done. So for 19 years, Jordan occupies this area. Jews have no access to our holy site. What happens to all the synagogues and the churches and all of the other sites here?
Well, first and foremost, all synagogues were destroyed. Day one. Later on, 19 churches were taken down by the Jordanians and turned into stables, warehouses and stables. We're talking of destruction and a neglected area, highly neglected.
Jamie, it's 1967. It's June. Israel's pleading with Jordan not to enter the Six-Day War, but I think they entered it. If we and our viewers were looking here, what would we see in June 1967?
The whole city was bombed. We're talking shelling Jewish neighborhoods, shooting from all the Jordanian posts towards the west side of the city. Total chaos.
And what happens? How are we standing here today if that's the case?
Well, 3 brigades sent over here to protect Jerusalem and the settlements around. The paratrooper brigade, number 55, enter Jerusalem from the north side, right behind me, and walk along the wall. That was 1 battalion walking along the wall. 2 battalions climbed up from the Kidron Valley down below us to the ridge we're standing on right now. And if you noticed, Doran, right behind me is the Augusta Victoria Hospital. And from that spot, Motagur, the colonel, the commander of the paratroopers, stands, looks towards the old city, the scenery that you're seeing right behind us now. And he tells his people to walk in, to enter the city, and to capture the city back.
So the old city is returned. And what happens when those Jews reach the Western Wall?
Well, all this happened, by the way, 8:30 in the morning. By 10 o'clock, the Israeli paratroopers got to the Western Wall, raised a flag on that Western Wall saying, Har Habayit beyadenu, Temple Mount is in our hands. And you have to try and understand how dramatic that scene is. We're talking of a nation scattered in all corners of the world for 2,000 years, praying, yearning, dreaming for that moment. And finally, those 3 words, Har Habayit beyadenu, Temple Mount in our hands. We've done it, we're back, we're home. And that was liberating, finally liberating Jerusalem, coming back home.
The most important gravesite and cemetery in the Jewish world. Hands down, Jews were being buried here across from the Temple Mount really for thousands of years. What happens here today in the Mount of Olives? What do people see here today?
Well, walking or driving around Mount of Olives, you can see many churches, many religious monuments, many houses, but first and foremost is the most ancient and largest Jewish cemetery in the world. Jews have been buried here for millennia.
Jamie, just a few weeks ago, I received an email from a woman living in the United States who, when she was 2 years old, her father was killed during these wars and buried on the Mount of Olives. Later, Jordan captured the Mount of Olives, and the family never found the grave again until she saw on the internet, part of our grave restoration project, that the grave had been recovered just a few weeks ago, and she said she wants to come to Israel and visit. Can you give us some background on how that happened, how they became covered?
Once Jordan took over this area in 1948, this whole area was abandoned and neglected. Worse than that, they paved a new road right underneath us called the Way to Jericho, or the Road to Jericho.
But there are graves beneath us.
Yes, but they paved them over those graves. The thing is that that road led to Jericho. The whole area was abandoned, plus many other tombstones were taken out to use Jordanian structures and posts. We find them up until these days scattered around Mount of Olives, and one of the most important and amazing projects that are being conducted these days over here is restoration to this cemetery over here. Every day you have an effort of people coming over here and restoring this cemetery.
I think, Jamie, this is a wonderful time to say to all of our viewers, we feel very privileged to be here in Jerusalem on Jerusalem Day, and we are enormously appreciative of your joining us in your homes wherever you are around the world. We want to roll out the red carpet and say to you, as soon as COVID is over, come and visit us online, physically come join us and experience. When we look out at this view, you feel it all throughout your entire being. It's open for all, the city of David, the Western Wall, this entire area of the Mount of Olives. We look forward to welcoming you in the gates of Jerusalem. Happy Jerusalem Day.
Happy Jerusalem Day, Duran.
The city of David, where it all began.